Morning carries a unique kind of power because it represents beginnings. No matter how heavy yesterday was, the arrival of a new day quietly announces that the story is still moving forward. Many people wake up carrying old burdens into a new sunrise, replaying yesterday's pain before the day has even begun. Survival mode becomes familiar, shaping how they think, react, and expect life to unfold. Yet there comes a moment when the cycle shifts, when the day no longer begins with dread, but with possibility. That shift marks a turning point. Living in survival mode means constantly bracing for impact. It means expecting disappointment, guarding emotions, and preparing for loss before it happens. Over time, this posture exhausts the soul. Even moments of peace feel temporary, as if they might be taken away at any moment. A turning point begins when you recognize that life does not have to be lived in constant defense. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of trust that you are not facing them alone. This turning point often begins quietly, not with dramatic change, but with an inner decision. A decision to stop letting past pain dictate present expectations. A decision to believe that today can hold something different. Rest enters where striving once ruled. Hope replaces the habit of anticipating the worst. This is not denial of reality, it is a reorientation of the heart. You begin to shift from merely enduring the day to engaging it with openness. Wholeness is not about erasing scars, but about no longer being controlled by them. When a turning point occurs, wounds are acknowledged without being allowed to dominate. Pain becomes part of the story, not the headline. Faith begins to rise, not as blind optimism, but as steady confidence that healing is actively at work. The mind starts to loosen its grip on fear, and the heart gradually relearns how to trust. Peace does not arrive all at once. It unfolds in layers. A calmer thought here, a gentler response there. Anxiety that once shouted begins to whisper. Rest becomes less about sleep and more about internal stillness. You discover that you can move through challenges without losing yourself. This is the movement from survival into stability, from constant tension into grounded presence. Hope also changes shape at this turning point. Instead of hoping simply to get through the day, you begin to hope for growth, connection, and renewal. You allow yourself to imagine a future not defined by what hurt you. This hope fuels courage. It invites you to take small steps forward even when certainty is absent. Each morning becomes an opportunity to reinforce this shift, choosing trust over fear, rest over panic, openness over withdrawal. Over time, these choices reshape the inner landscape. What once felt fragile becomes resilient. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. The turning point is not a single moment frozen in time, but a daily invitation into peace, wholeness, and renewed life. There is a natural instinct to hide pain, especially when it feels overwhelming or confusing. Many people learn early that showing hurt can invite misunderstanding, judgment, or rejection. As a result, they bury their wounds beneath silence, distraction, or busyness. They convince themselves that if they don't talk about it, think about it, or acknowledge it, the pain will eventually fade. But hidden wounds do not heal on their own. What is concealed often grows heavier, shaping thoughts, emotions, and reactions in subtle but powerful ways. Honesty is the doorway through which healing enters. This kind of honesty is not about having the perfect words or understanding everything clearly. It is about acknowledging reality as it is, admitting that something hurts, that something broke, or that something is still unresolved takes courage. It requires stepping out of denial and into awareness. While this moment can feel uncomfortable, it is also the moment where healing begins to take shape. Truth creates space for restoration to work. Surrender is often misunderstood as weakness or defeat, but in reality, it is an act of strength. Surrender does not mean giving up hope. It means releasing the illusion of control. It is recognizing that carrying everything alone is unsustainable. When you surrender, you stop fighting the fact that you are human and in need of care. This release allows healing to move from the surface to the deeper layers of the heart. Many people fear honesty because they worry it will expose their flaws or failures. They believe that if they admit where they are struggling, they will be defined by it. But honesty does not define you by your pain. It frees you from being controlled by it. When wounds are brought into the open, they lose some of their power. What once operated in the shadows becomes something that can be addressed, understood, and transformed. Surrender also involves letting go of self-blame. Some carry guilt for their pain, believing they should have known better or done more. This self-accusation becomes another burden layered on top of the original wound. Healing requires releasing this weight and allowing compassion to replace condemnation. You cannot heal in an environment of constant self-judgment. Restoration flourishes where grace is allowed to breathe. Honesty and surrender create alignment between what you feel and what you present. When inner truth and outer expression match, the heart finds relief. Pretending drains energy. Honesty restores it. You no longer have to remember which version of yourself you showed to which person. You are free to be whole even in your brokenness. Surrender is not a single moment, but an ongoing posture. Each time pain resurfaces, you are invited again to release control and choose honesty. Healing deepens with repetition. Over time, what once felt terrifying to admit becomes a source of clarity and strength. Through honesty, wounds are exposed. Through surrender, they are restored. There is a quiet pressure placed on people to be strong at all times, to keep going no matter how much it hurts, to push through exhaustion and emotional pain without slowing down. Strength becomes as a mask, something worn to protect others from seeing what is really happening inside. Over time, this kind of strength is praised, rewarded, and even expected, yet carrying pain without healing was never meant to be a lifelong strategy. Endurance alone is not the goal, wholeness is. Many learn early on that showing vulnerability feels risky. They are taught directly or indirectly that admitting pain makes them a burden or a disappointment. So they become experts at coping instead of healing. They manage symptoms while ignoring the root. They function efficiently while slowly falling apart internally. This kind of strength keeps life moving forward on the surface, but it leaves the deeper wounds untouched. Eventually, what is ignored begins to surface in other ways through fatigue, bitterness, anxiety, or emotional numbness. True strength does not deny pain, it acknowledges it. It takes courage to admit that something hurts, and even more courage to stop pretending that everything is fine. Strength that refuses healing eventually turns into self-protection rather than growth. It builds walls instead of bridges, distance instead of connection. While it may help someone survive, it rarely allows them to thrive. Healing, on the other hand, invites restoration where survival only allows endurance. There is also a misunderstanding that rest and healing mean weakness or laziness. Many believe that slowing down will cause them to fall behind or lose control. But constant striving without restoration leads to burnout. Healing is not quitting, it is recalibrating. It is recognizing that the soul, like the body, needs care to remain healthy. Ignoring emotional and spiritual wounds does not make them disappear. It simply gives them time to deepen. Strength without healing often results in a hardened heart. When pain is continually suppressed, it can turn into resentment or emotional distance. People may still show up physically, but they withdraw emotionally. They love cautiously, trust reluctantly, and hope minimally. Healing softens what pain has hardened. It restores the ability to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, to trust without being naive, and to hope without fear of disappointment. Being whole means allowing yourself to be both strong and honest. It means understanding that resilience includes knowing when to seek restoration. Healing does not erase the fact that you endured, it completes it. It brings balance back to what pain disrupted. You were never meant to carry wounds indefinitely as proof of strength. The deeper purpose has always been restoration, so that the strength you carry is not rooted in survival alone, but in peace, clarity, and renewed life. Healing often feels intimidating because many people believe it requires them to reach a certain standard first. They think they must be calmer, stronger, more faithful, or more put together before they are worthy of restoration. This belief creates distance, making healing feel like a reward for perfection rather than a response to brokenness. But true healing does not begin with self-improvement. It begins with an invitation that calls you forward exactly as you are, not as you wish you were. Many delay healing because they feel unqualified. They look at their doubts, their anger, their confusion, and assume these disqualify them from peace. They believe they must resolve every question, overcome every flaw, and fix every mistake before they can move forward. This pressure only deepens exhaustion and keeps wounds open. Healing was never designed to be earned. It was designed to be received. The invitation is extended not to the strongest version of you, but to the most honest one. Coming as you are requires vulnerability. It means laying down the need to perform or impress. It means admitting where you are tired, where you are confused, and where you are still hurting. This kind of honesty can feel uncomfortable because it removes the mask of control, yet healing cannot begin where pretending continues. The invitation into healing is gentle, not demanding. It does not ask you to explain everything clearly or justify your pain. It simply asks you to show up with what you have, even if all you have is weariness. Perfection creates distance, but presence creates connection. Healing responds to openness, not polish. You do not need to clean up your emotions before bringing them forward. You do not need to silence your questions or suppress your fears. Healing meets you in the mess, not after it is resolved. When you come honestly, even with uncertainty, you create space for restoration to begin its work. Many people fear that if they come as they are, they will be rejected or judged. Past experiences may have taught them that vulnerability leads to disappointment. As a result, they guard themselves carefully, sharing only what feels safe. But healing cannot flow through walls built for self-protection. The invitation into healing is safe precisely because it does not depend on your performance. It is rooted in compassion, not criticism. Coming as you are also means accepting that healing is a process, not an instant transformation. The invitation is not into immediate perfection, but into ongoing renewal. Some days will feel lighter, others heavier. Some steps will feel like progress, others like pauses. But the invitation remains constant. You are not called to arrive healed. You are called to begin healing. When you accept this invitation, something shifts internally. The pressure to be perfect loosens its grip. The fear of not being enough begins to fade. You realize that healing is not about becoming someone else, but about becoming whole. And that wholeness starts the moment you stop hiding and take the first honest step forward, just as you are. There are moments in life when pain becomes so familiar that it feels invisible, not just to others, but even to yourself. You learn how to live with it, how to move through the day while carrying a quiet ache in your heart. You smile when expected, you speak when necessary, and you keep going even when something inside you feels fractured. Yet the truth that needs to settle deeply within you today is this: none of that pain has gone unnoticed. Every tear you held back in public and released in private, every prayer whispered through exhaustion, every sigh that carried more weight than words could express has been fully seen and understood. There is an awareness that reaches beyond what people can perceive. While others may have misunderstood your silence or overlooked your struggle, nothing about your suffering slipped past divine attention. When you felt abandoned by people you trusted, when support failed and comfort seemed distant, you were still known, even the moments when you couldn't explain what hurt. When you didn't have the language for your emotions, your pain was already understood at a level deeper than words. Being seen in this way does not mean your suffering was approved or caused, but that it was never ignored. Sometimes the most painful wounds are the ones no one claps for you to survive. The quiet disappointments, the long seasons of waiting, the repeated letdowns that slowly wear down hope. You may have wondered if anyone truly noticed how much you were carrying or how close you were to giving up. The assurance you are being offered is not that life was fair, but that your pain mattered. It mattered enough to be counted, remembered, and held with compassion. Nothing you endured was too small to be noticed or too heavy to be understood. When pain goes unseen by people, it often creates shame. You begin to question whether your feelings are valid or whether you are overreacting. You tell yourself to be grateful, to be stronger, to stop feeling what you feel. But being seen breaks that cycle. It reminds you that your emotions are real, your hurt is legitimate, and your struggle is not a sign of weakness. Being seen affirms that your pain has a place And that place is not one of judgment, but of care. This awareness also brings comfort in moments when answers are missing. You may not yet understand why things unfolded the way they did or why healing seemed delayed, but knowing that your pain has been seen assures you that your story is not unfinished and your suffering is not forgotten. Even when you felt unheard, even when you felt overlooked, even when you felt alone in a crowded room, you were never invisible. What you carried in silence was known, and that knowledge becomes the foundation upon which hope can slowly rise again. Pain has a way of convincing people that something is wrong with them, that because they are hurting, they must be failing or falling behind. Many quietly believe that if they were stronger, more faithful, or more disciplined, they would not be struggling the way they are. This mindset turns pain into a verdict instead of a season, making people feel disqualified from peace, joy, or purpose. But pain is not a sign that you are unworthy or unchosen. It is often the place where the deepest work begins, where transformation quietly takes root beneath the surface. Brokenness does not cancel calling. In fact, it often reveals it. Throughout life, the moments that feel most painful are often the ones that shape character, deepen compassion, and sharpen understanding. Pain strips away illusions of control and self-sufficiency, forcing the heart to look for something greater than itself. What feels like weakness on the outside can become the very space where strength is rebuilt from the inside out. Pain humbles, softens, and opens the heart in ways comfort never could. Many people try to escape pain as quickly as possible, rushing toward distraction, denial, or constant activity. While these methods may numb the ache temporarily, they rarely lead to true healing. Pain that is avoided often returns in different forms, heavier and more complicated. When pain is faced instead of fled, it becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. It reveals what matters, what needs attention, and what can no longer be ignored. This is not to say that pain is good, but that it can be used to produce something good when it is allowed to do its deeper work. There is a sacred paradox in suffering. What feels like an ending is often a beginning. Pain clears the ground for renewal by exposing wounds that were previously hidden. It brings honesty where pretending once lived. It creates space for healing by breaking the illusion that everything is fine. In this way, pain becomes a doorway rather than a dead end. Walking through it does not mean surrendering to despair. It means choosing growth over stagnation and healing over avoidance. Pain also has a way of connecting people to compassion. Those who have suffered deeply often become more sensitive to the struggles of others. They listen differently, love more gently, and understand more profoundly. The very experiences that once felt like disqualifications become sources of empathy and wisdom. What hurt you can shape how you help others, turning wounds into wells of understanding rather than walls of isolation. Healing does not mean pretending the pain never existed. It means allowing it to be transformed. Scars remain not as reminders of defeat, but as evidence of survival and growth. Pain does not define your worth, and it does not decide your future. When faced with courage and honesty, it becomes the place where renewal begins, where strength is reformed, and where a deeper, more resilient version of you starts to emerge.